I feel like I'm talking about X-Men and the mutants, right? Professor Xavier would get the gifted students, making mutants. They're not making mutants, right? This is Laricy Live, and I'm your host, Matt Laricy, giving you unfiltered access to the world of real estate. We cover market trends, news, and give you the honest answers that will keep you ahead of the real estate game. Okay, guys, so today we are talking about how to navigate Chicago school system. And we brought in an expert, probably the most sought-after school expert in the nation, I'd say, Julianne Walsh with IOR. Julianne, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So, you know, this is a big topic that comes up with a lot of our people and buyers that are moving and buyers who have kids and stuff like that as a school system. And there's a lot of different schools in Chicago. You got neighborhood, selective, magnet charters, right? Is there any more that I'm missing?
Montessori's.
Privates.
Parochial.
I don't even know what that means, but okay. So
affiliated with religion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a laundry list. I always tell people you need an extra college education to be more educated in the school systems, right?
Here you might need that.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, do you know why there's so many different school systems?
Because we're the third largest school district in the nation. So
it makes sense. You need more options.
It makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
You need a lot of options for a lot of people.
So would you say that the Chicago school system is difficult to navigate?
Yes and no. I think that it takes a little bit of patience to understand it, especially the public school system. There are so many different types of schools, and actually I kind of made a list because I didn't want to mess it up. But
okay.
Typical school, I grew up in Atlanta, and
yep.
you would go to your neighborhood school.
Yep.
Down the street, and then you'd go to your middle school and your high school.
Yeah, and that's it. It's easy as pie.
Easy
right?
as pie. It's not how it works here.
Yeah.
I live 4 houses down from Drummond Montessori.
Yeah.
We've never gotten in.
Like you applied and couldn't get in?
Yeah, it's a magnet school, which means there's
okay.
a lottery involved. And so...
What is a magnet? What does magnet school mean?
So they admit students within their boundary based on a lottery.
Okay.
And when they have spaces left, they admit kids from across, the city.
Okay.
And usually they have some sort of focus, like STEM,
okay.
Arts, anything,
yeah.
a specific focus. And the difficult part is, I live within a mile, so I get a boundary lottery.
Right.
So it's a different lottery than just the regular lottery.
Mm-hmm.
But we applied probably 4 years in a row, and I never got in.
There's multiple lotteries going on. You have a boundary, and then you have a test in, I'm assuming?
No, so test is different.
Okay. I'm already confused.
Yes. So neighborhood schools,
yeah.
you get in.
Yeah.
You walk down the street.
Yeah.
You're in the district.
Yeah.
You get in. That's
okay.
a neighborhood school.
Right.
And then they have things called selective schools.
Okay.
So this is where they have gifted schools. So regional gifted school is something. So my daughter went to one in kindergarten.
Okay.
You test to see, your IQ. And so regional gifted center, let's say like Coonley, that's where
yeah.
she went. The way that it works is there's one classroom in each grade.
Okay.
That is your regional gifted center. So you go through 8th grade, kindergarten through 8th grade with the same kids.
Okay.
And it is usually like a year ahead is what you're studying.
Okay.
And then there are things called classical schools. So they have 5 classical schools. And this is, again, you test in. So anything that's selective
yeah. means
you have to test. I think the most familiar thing for people is selective enrollment high schools. And we have,
like what's an example of a selective enrollment high school?
Walter Payton.
WP. Got
Whitney
it.
Young.
Okay.
Lane Tech.
And these are like impossible ones to get into. Your kid's got to be like a genius, right?
Pretty much.
Okay. No D students are at Walter Payton.
You can't even apply to a selective enrollment school for
okay.
high school unless you have all A's.
Okay.
So then if you have all A's.
I just lost 50% of our audience.
If you have all A's, then you can take the entrance exam.
Okay.
Now, the way that it works in order to make it sort of more fair make an equal playing ground
yeah.
is the CPS puts every area of town, like every neighborhood, in a tier.
Okay.
So it's tier 1 through tier 4. So
Okay.
tier 4 is usually your more affluent neighborhoods like Lincoln Park, Gold Coast.
Yeah.
They make it so you don't get a lot of extra points for you basically have to go to Walter Payton and you live in tier 4, you have to have almost a perfect score.
Yeah.
And so they try to make it equitable because, you can pay for tutors. Sometimes you have better school options. So they just want to make it equitable around.
So people in like lower income areas have a better chance. It might be in tier 1, so they have it because they don't have as much opportunity as tier 4, probably. Is
Correct.
that correct? Okay.
Correct. So
Okay.
they want to make sure that it's sort of an equal playing ground, and people have the option to test into these schools.
So that's selective gifted schools, right?
So
I feel like I'm talking about X-Men and the mutants, right? Professor Xavier would get the gifted students, making mutants. They're not making mutants here, right?
So
Okay.
I can
All right, we're not
confuse
teaching
you
skills.
and teach you all of the
Okay.
ones, but it's I think the biggest selective enrollment is
Yeah.
the high school that
Okay.
most people know. And then if you have a child that you think is a quick learner,
Yeah.
there are options.
Like magnets and stuff like that.
So there are magnets, and then there's things you can test into.
Okay.
So I think that, this is where it gets confusing,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
and then there are things that, like, let's say you really want your kid to get into Whitney Young.
Right.
You can test in to things called academic centers in 7th and 8th grade. So you basically go to high school when you're in 7th and 8th grade. And that makes sure that you'll get into Whitney
Yeah.
Young, or you get into Lane Tech. Not all of them have academic centers. But that's a great way and kids that are advanced to
Are
get in.
there just all these kids like super kids, like geniuses? Because like
A lot of them are pretty
hundreds
smart.
and A's, and I mean, just for the record, guys, I was a C minus average student. I've done pretty decent in my life, but I gotta tell you, if you gave me my ACT score was at 20. That is a fact. Okay, so like I start taking tests, and they're talking about 2 trains going against each other. I'm thinking to myself, like, who's beating these guys at the train? And like, why aren't we loading these trains up more and selling off more goods, right? And then next thing you know, 30 minutes goes by. So I'm not making these selective schools.
That's all
But
right.
these kids, I mean, we're creating like select super mutants, I think.
Yeah.
Like, we got Cyclops and Wolverine going these things in my mind. But what are the problems that these parents run into? Because like everything you're saying makes sense, and you're a phenomenal job explaining it. But like, if I'm a parent, my kid is, I got one super smart kid, and I got one kid that's like, he's beautiful, great kid. He just doesn't get the, A+ student. Like, what are my problems that I'm running into?
Well, so perfect example. I have a friend who has 3 sons, 3 different schools.
Okay.
So the reason is every kid's different. Every kid needs something different.
Right.
And so that is the beauty of the Chicago school system, that there are so many options. And it's frustrating if you don't know what your options are. So I think, for instance, a private school,
Yeah.
the reason that somebody would do that in general is I think you look at class size, right? And student-teacher ratio. Sort of if you want that kind of environment, public schools, you think about it. So private schools, there's 20 kids max usually per class, and there's sometimes less.
Okay.
30 kids is the mean for public schools, and it goes up to 38.
Wow.
So that's one teacher, 38 kids. That's a lot.
Sounds like a nightmare.
And
Sounds like a horror movie.
yeah, I mean, imagine,
Yeah.
right?
I don't want to imagine.
Yeah, I'm like, and you being one of
First
my,
off, I'm just thinking to myself that like your friend is a saint, that she's got 3 kids going to 3 different schools. I mean, she's got to drop off 3 different people. Like that's a job in its own.
But I think the nice thing about the city too is public transportation. So
Yeah.
she's got one that's, he's going to be a sophomore, so he
can kind of go on his own.
Yeah, he
Uber
takes
or
the
something
bus.
like that.
Yeah.
Bus, yeah.
And
Yeah.
my daughter is a junior, and she last year took the train until her friends started to be able to drive. So it's nice, I think for the city, there are options to get to school outside of, your mom having to take you everywhere. So yeah.
So minus some of those problems, like students, we talked about like if you want to go to like a magnet school or a charter private school, whatever, you have to apply. But like for basic schools, like I live across the street from Blaine.
Yeah.
I could just go to Blaine, right?
Blaine's a fantastic school.
Okay, so we're
Yes.
giving Blaine a thumbs up.
That's a neighborhood school.
Neighborhood school.
Yep.
So you got good ones like I've heard Blaine, Bell, Burley, Lincoln, Coonley, Audubon.
Audubon's a good one. So
Burr?
Burr is definitely, so I live in Bucktown.
Up and coming, maybe?
It is. It's more than up and coming.
Okay.
But yeah, so it was a lot of parents took over, and that's what you have in these neighborhood schools, that parents are like, hey, we want our neighborhood to have a great school, and so they sort of dig in and say, okay, how can we make this better, and raise money for the school and try to keep the neighborhood kids involved.
What makes like something like a Lincoln Elementary so good, and then you got like let's say like Alcott and some of these other ones, Mayor, like they're not as they're not as good. They're good, right? But they're not as good.
Well, they're different, right?
Okay.
So Mayor is...
I like that answer. Instead of saying bad, it's different.
Well, no, because they all are. And I think that's the problem that people run into. And they look at, people are so hooked on the ratings without really understanding the schools.
And which ratings are we going off? Because you got the greatschools.org, you got,
Niche, you've got School Digger, you've got all of them. So you have to understand what they're telling you, right?
Yeah.
So I always tell people, for just raw facts, you go to Illinois State Report Card. So
IllinoisStateReportCard.com.
Yeah.
Best facts.
What is it? Illinois Report Card.
Sorry, IllinoisReportCard.com.
Yeah.
So it's IllinoisReportCard.com is your favorite.
So that is just raw data.
Okay, raw data.
So that is like, there's no opinion.
Unbiased.
It's unbiased.
Okay.
So this is test scores, and it breaks it down into demographics and, the way that students have improved over the years. So, and then it's a little bit like the principal is allowed to add some special information about the school as well. But so then I think where people I think the most well-known out of all of them is Great Schools.
Greatschools.org.
Yeah, that's the one that's on Zillow. And, whenever you pull up a real estate site, they usually use Great Schools. So they're great. I actually took some notes because this is one of those things that I think people need to understand.
Yeah.
They look at 3 different factors, and one is student achievement. So that's like the Illinois, the
Illinois
state
report
required
card.
testing component.
Okay.
Student growth. So that's year to year, the change in the standardized testing.
So like how much they performed over the year, have they gotten better?
Yes.
Okay.
And then the third one is college readiness.
How do you prepare? How do they rate in that thing?
So high school graduation rates,
okay,
performance on SAT and ACT.
Okay.
So those are the 3 that great schools look at.
Okay.
Now, if you're not at high school, then the great schools only rate you on the first 2.
Okay.
And so that's just as similar as the Illinois report card.
Okay.
Now, one that I sort of find interesting, but people sort of have a problem with, is niche.com.
That's NICHE.com. So NICHE.com is the third one, guys.
So they look at a lot of different factors, and I think so a lot of the same factors as grade school, but then they add personal, like parent and student surveys.
Okay.
So that's good and bad. I think the good part about it is that you get to learn a little bit more about the school from kids that go there.
Right.
But then you also have to wonder, like, who are these people that are putting these reviews in, right? And like, what if somebody has a vendetta against the school and had a really terrible time?
It's like a Yelp review when you read about a restaurant. They're like mad because like there wasn't enough salt in the shaker, so they give it a 1 star.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I think it's helpful.
I'm just saying, you got to be relatable here.
Yeah. No, but it is. I mean, and I think so. I always tell people you can look at them. I think it's great to look. I love Illinois report card. I think that's unbiased. And then niche, you get a little more flavor.
So it's kind of like a cross-reference, right? If you're interested in, let's say, Alcott, you look at 3 different things and see. I mean, I get people who won't move outside of Lincoln Elementary. They're like, I only want Lincoln Elementary because it's rated the best. And then, like, property values are drastically different if you move to, like, an Alcott or, the names escape me, off Ashland, on Wrightwood and Ashland. But there's another one over there. And Mayor and all this.
Burley,
well, Burley's good though, right?
Burley's great.
Yeah. Burley, Blaine, Bell, Coonley, Audubon. That's how I normally say it. Jan is getting better, right? Or is it John or Jan?
Jan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds cooler too.
I mean, so people want to stay in the city.
Yeah.
They want their neighborhood school to be better.
Yeah.
I think one thing, and I've noticed a lot too, people get tripped up on, and especially in real estate, and people that don't know the school system.
Yeah.
Like they'll say, oh, okay, well, like let's say Hawthorne, right?
Yeah.
Well, Hawthorne is a lottery school. It's not a neighborhood school.
Right.
But I notice on a lot of real estate websites, it'll say, oh, you want to live near Hawthorne because it's one of the better schools in Lincoln Park.
But you can't just go there.
You can't just go.
You got to. That's a selective enrollment or a magnet.
It's a magnet. So that's the difference. Like this is why it's
so the magnets, the test-in, right? Lottery system, 2 lottery systems.
It's
right?
not a test-in. It's a lottery system.
That's only lottery.
Only lottery.
Based off of.
So they try to make it an equal. It's a computerized lottery.
Okay.
So
we just got to hack the system, guys. Hack the system.
Pretty much. Pay somebody that's in IT. So
okay.
So this is why let's say it's confusing and it's not confusing.
Yeah.
But yeah, Lincoln Elementary is incredible.
What makes so like? And I'm just curious because like here's and I'm trying to come from a perspective as an average parent that like I sell a lot of real estate. I know it from talking to parents, but like, why is Lincoln Elementary so much better than Netta Horse? Like, what makes it so much better?
Well, it's been around in the sense of, so like we were talking about Burr, how Burr was up and coming, 16 years ago.
Yeah.
It takes a while to gain traction. So, and that is such a small area that feeds into Lincoln.
Yeah.
With very high price tags. Lincoln Park has always had a high price tag, right?
Yes.
So all of those schools, even Meyer, those are areas that people can afford really nice houses, and then they want to keep their kid in public school and have their kid walk to their neighborhood school.
Right.
So there's a lot of that. Also, Lincoln has a French immersion program.
Yeah.
So that makes it pretty popular with, I work in relocation. So there are a lot of people that, are very interested in that.
Yeah.
In fact, I just had a client recently that rented a place there in Lincoln and started their daughter yesterday. So,
nice.
Because it is that, because it has such a good reputation, they get good teachers. They have a lot of funding. They have extra funding from parents. It is just one of those things. It's like a snowball effect.
Right.
So that's what happens in a lot of different neighborhoods, that people are committed to staying in the city and want to have a great neighborhood public school.
So let's say I'm a parent and my kid's doing really well and he wants to go to one of these private or charter private testing schools. What's the process? I go online and fill out an application? Is that like what I do?
Correct. Now, real quick.
And is there cutoffs?
Can I correct you really quickly? Charter schools are public.
Charter, okay.
So charter schools are free.
Okay.
They're part of the CPS system.
Yeah.
But they're run differently.
Okay.
So just for correction.
No,
so
that's what we need to be doing here.
Yeah.
We're trying to teach everybody out there what these all are.
Yeah, no, it's nice because I do think that those are really becoming more and more popular.
The charters are.
The charters are.
Okay.
Because I think, you can specialize. You can find, say your kid's into, to arts, and there are a lot of charter schools that lean that way. It's an application process.
Yeah.
So the difference between so if you're in a neighborhood school and you move in the middle of the year, you get into that school automatically as long as you have a lease or a contract.
Correct.
So for some of these other schools, like if you are trying to apply in the selective schools, what happens is you have to put in your application before the end of the year. And usually, especially at the selective enrollment high schools, it doesn't matter what time of year you come in. If you've missed the cutoff, they're so popular. They usually have a waiting list of people that they already have. So you just have to wait till the next year.
How long? So let's say I want to get into Walter Payton, right? My kid is graduating 8th grade this year. How far out am I applying?
Well, you apply, the cutoff for applications, I believe, I've got December stuck in my head. So it's between, it opens in September.
About a half year, we'll say.
Yeah.
Out. And then how soon do I find out from there?
Well, you don't find out until spring. And so usually...
That's stressful because I don't know where my kid's going at this point.
So the way that it works, so private, parochial, and CPS.
Yeah.
So you usually find out private and parochial first.
Yeah.
And so you have to put a deposit down.
Okay.
And it's a non-refundable deposit, and you're still waiting on your CPS. So there are a lot of people that'll take that gamble and say, look, I'm going to put my deposit down at Latin or Parker or British, and if I get into Walter Payton.
What's that deposit? How much?
Ooh.
10 grand, 5 grand, 2 grand?
I want to say it's more around 5 to 10.
I bet these schools are just cleaning it up just from these deposits.
Hey.
So like, yeah, we made a couple $100,000 from these deposits now. That's a genius move to make money. It's free cash.
Well, right, but they're also trying to find commitment. Right?
I get it. I totally get it. I'm just saying it's a good moneymaker. They could probably up that too.
It would make sense for people to. It would make sense for people for all of the schools to come out at one time, but. Yeah. CPS is such a beast in the sense of so many applications.
Yeah.
It's all computerized.
So when we're talking about privates, we brought up privates. There's a lot of different privates. You got British, you got Latin, you got Parker, you got Catherine Cook.
GEMS. Well,
GEMS.
So you also have to look at it this way. There are privates like Latin and Parker, Lab.
Yeah.
British that go preschool through 12th grade.
Which is huge.
Huge. So that's why they have the $40,000 price tags. Then, like my kids went to, one of them still is there, but at Catherine Cook, that's preschool through 8th grade.
Right.
So, and then along with those kind of schools and all the public schools, you have to think about high school.
Right.
So I do think that there are a lot of people that decide, okay, it's worth it to me to just send my kid to a Latin, a Parker, or whatever. I mean, for more reasons, but a lot of it is you don't want to deal with the high school factor.
Right.
And those schools in particular will open up more spots closer to high school.
Okay.
So kids can can apply, and you have to get.
How hard is it getting? Like, okay, I get a kid going into kindergarten. How hard it is for my kid to get in a Latin or a Park or a Lab or something?
Well, so I think it's very competitive. I think because there's so many legacies, right? Mm-hmm. So they want to keep families there. They want to have siblings.
Yeah.
So I think that if you look at usually when people are applying, they're usually a lot of the spots taken by that. Mm-hmm. And it's an interview process, so it is.
They interview the kid?
They interview the kid.
They interview
kindergarten? The parents. Oh, yeah. They want to see if, you're eating the crayons or you're riding with them. But I don't know, they may take you if you eat them because
You got to have one kid eating the crayon.
100%, because everybody has to
They can't grow up around nobody eating any crayons.
No.
So, I mean, that's not real life. They got maybe two kids eat crayons out of 20. Yeah. The other 18 are great people.
It's a creative process.
Yeah.
So it's a very intense process.
So let's say you get your kid into a Latin. If you have a second kid, is he more favored to get in because you already have one in there?
Correct. It's not automatic, but they definitely like to keep families together. So definitely.
Do they ever you tell them we'll kind of give is there envelopes on the table here? Is this how any of this stuff works, or is this all who you know?
It's a lot of who you know.
Okay.
I do think, in the private sector, just like anything.
Yeah.
If you are a big donor, it's helpful, but it doesn't mean that's going to definitely get you in. I know people that have been big donors in the past, and they have multiple kids, and one of them doesn't get in.
Wow.
And they can be selective and particular, and it differs for every family and every kid, and sometimes that kid is just not the right fit for the school.
How does Latin, Parker, GEMS, Cook, Lab? Am I missing any?
You know what? I did write them down because this is exactly why I do this kind of things.
While you're looking at that, how do they what makes one better than the other?
Well, that's all relative, right?
It's just personal.
It's personal.
Maybe one specializes in Cook kind of specialize more in technology and stuff like that.
Yes.
And Parker made something else. I don't know what it specializes.
Well, and I also think too, so we also have Lycée Français and the German school.
Yep.
So there are different options for international people that are looking for, British is one of the big ones because they have the same system all over the world.
Right.
So it's not what makes it better because they're all very different.
Now, do most people that send their kids to private, are they happy that they did it, or do they wish they would have done the magnets, selective enrollment type stuff?
I think it varies. Now,
Yeah.
we ended up, I mean, I'll just tell you my path, and I can tell you if my husband's listening, I know that he would say he wishes that we had done the public route the whole way just because of the price tag.
Yeah.
But on the whole, I think for us as a family, it was the right decision. We were, in Bucktown, we started at Burr for our first year. It was great.
Yeah.
A spot at paid preschool at Alcott opened up. They had a high school. So we were like, great, we're going to send our kid to Alcott. She's going to go there through high school. It'll be perfect.
Right.
Well, when she was going into kindergarten, they changed the rules at CPS.
Perfect.
And of course it had to happen to me. And I swear to you, this is why I know so much about the schools, because I had to.
Yeah.
So they changed it where if you applied, you were in paid preschool, you still had to go through the lottery system.
Yeah.
So we went through the lottery. She didn't get into Alcott, but luckily we had tested her for the gifted program. She got into Coonley. She went to Coonley. Fantastic school. Loved it. I live in Bucktown. Coonley's up on Irvin Park.
Yeah.
I had a son that was about to start preschool. There was no way, and we didn't live in the boundaries, so there was no way he was getting in. And then we'd have to wait until kindergarten for him to test in.
Wow.
If he's going to test in, right? So at that point, we just were like, this isn't working for us.
Yeah.
We're not in, at that point, we felt like a neighborhood school that we wanted our kids to go to. I know that probably would anger some people, but at that point I didn't know enough about it.
Right.
So we decided, okay, it makes sense. We're going to get both of our kids into Catherine Cook. And so they stayed there and
And so far, your positive experience there.
Absolutely.
Now,
there are pros and cons to every school.
Right.
And that is,
there's no perfect solution out there.
There's no perfect solution.
And when you're talking about this, and you're talking about like, the lottery systems and things of that nature, because it keeps being brought up. Like, do we know exactly how the lottery system works?
It is computerized lottery, and they look at race, sex, I think demographics. I'll have to check, but it is computerized. Like, they make it so it is as fair as possible, but they want to make sure that they have, the right amount of girls and the right amount of boys, and then they also want to make it, diverse.
Yeah,
so
makes sense.
that is how the lottery works.
And then, like, when we're talking about and you mentioned this a few times, like, it's everything's different. Every kid's different, right?
Yes.
How are parents the best way for them to help navigate being like, okay, well, my kid specializes in math, he should go here or this? Like, where's the best way for them to find out where they could go to figure out what's the best one for their kids? Like, minus those three things we did, is there other options out there?
You know what? I think, like you're saying, resources for them to. Yeah. One of the ones that I loved when I was looking at preschools and Northside Parents Network.
Northside Parents Network.
It's great. It's a forum for families, right? So if you join, you have access to all their directories. They break down schools. I mean, it is, and you can also go on there and have chats, right? So and
is there a cost involved?
Yeah, I think it's about, I think it's $85 a year.
Okay.
You don't have to join. You can still go on their website and look at their information.
But it's a relatively small cost for if you might drop $40K on a kid's education too.
Exactly.
So
I mean, I think one of the things that you really should pay attention to, there are a lot of open houses, and there are open houses for public and private. And it is honestly the best way to figure out, you get a feeling, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you buy a house, you walk in your house, you're like, this is it.
Right.
You kind of know when you walk into a school and you're meeting the teachers, you're meeting the principal, whoever, and you're also seeing the kids that go there. You're seeing the families that are walking through. It's like you kind of get to kick the tires a little bit on your new car and check out sort of how you feel in that atmosphere. It says a lot. We toured a lot of schools, and
so interviewing teachers and talking to them, and like when you're doing that, what's a mistake that parents can make that they could regret? Do you see people keep saying like, I wish I would have done this, differently or anything?
I think it goes back to, in your head, what you think is the best decision for your kid, in the sense of like, I know best. I feel like I'm going to pigeonhole my child this way kind of thing. I mean, it's more about, you get stuck on ratings. You get stuck on, hey, Latin has this reputation versus, oh, we got into, we live across the street from Burley, but we're going to try for this private school because X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Now, it's different for every family. I don't think that there's a right or wrong. And I also think it's okay if you decide you make the wrong choice the first time.
Right.
I mean, that's why kids show up in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Like, kids change schools. People move. Like,
do you see that often? Like, kids, like, classrooms changing a lot?
Yeah. Well, not a ton, but yes. Like, so there are grades that people decide. I mean, it's when no one wants to deal with high school, they move to the burbs. So people usually try to get their kids out of there by, 2nd, 3rd grade.
What are the high schools? You got Peyton, you got Young, but those are selectives. So
you're talking about just like neighborhood schools?
Yeah, like I live here, River North. Where's my kid going to high school?
Well, it depends on, I'm trying to think what's the...
Ogden? Does Ogden have a high school?
Yeah, Ogden has a high school.
Is it terrible?
No, it actually isn't. Okay. I haven't looked at the ratings in a while, but I've toured it.
Okay.
It's definitely diverse internationally. Yeah. I think, Lakeview has a good high school. Lincoln Park is probably the most well-known. Okay. And within Lincoln Park, they have a bunch of different programs outside of just the neighborhood aspect that you can test into.
So another testing system.
But you can go straight into Lincoln Park and you don't have to worry about it. Or if you feel like, hey, I want to be in a different program, they have an IB program. Yeah. They have an honors program. You can test into those.
It seems like it's really stressful for parents if their kid isn't a A student. What if they're just a B student? They're kind of...
But that's fine. And there's several kids that, that flourish. Like you said, you're a C and, you own a company.
Minus.
C minus.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That might make...
Low C's, guys.
That might make your...
I'm an honest guy, but I did not like school.
Your clients... Well, right. I mean, some people just aren't that way, and it's totally fine. Yeah. I do think we all get caught up in the numbers because...
Totally.
If, there are a lot of kids that don't make all A's and can't even apply to the selective enrollment schools. It doesn't mean you're not a smart kid and you're not going to succeed and do well. You just have to know your options. And I think that's what the scary part about it.
Yeah. I think that's a big thing is because I think a lot of parents they think they're gambling with their kid's future, right?
Yes.
Which, I mean, technically you kind of are, but I think it seems like the common theme with the school stuff is if you got good parents and the parents are involved with the school, really you could kind of sweat through anything.
100%.
And maybe some parents are overthinking Burley versus Blaine, and maybe you don't have to move just because of that.
Well, right.
One's 0.5 lower than the other one.
And like I said, I think the best way to do it is to go and actually visit the school. And, and websites now, I mean, since COVID, everybody has amazing websites.
Yeah.
The curriculum's on there, they talk about how they deal with kids that are fast learners versus, kids that need a little extra help. So those are the kind of things that if that interests you, you need to pay attention to.
Okay. So we're going to wrap up with a few points because we got a lot of information out here. We don't overload people, but we'll back it up to the beginning and the basics. We have neighborhood schools, magnet schools, charter schools,
correct,
selective enrollment schools,
correct,
private schools,
correct.
Am I missing any?
Montessori
schools.
And parochial.
What are the last two again?
Montessori. So those are, it's a different system where they put different age kids in classes together and they learn differently.
Wow.
So they all learn at their own pace. So they have public Montessoris and they have private Montessoris.
Okay.
And then parochial, that's any religious-based school.
Oh, okay.
They've got
those are popular though around here.
Yeah, Catholic schools, Bernard Zell. Yeah, there are tons of them.
Yeah.
So that's the
They're cheaper too.
They're cheaper than private.
Right. Not cheaper than public, but I think they're like half the cost of a Latin or something like that.
Correct.
So, is there anything bad about that before we wrap up that people should know?
Bad about the parochial schools? No. I mean, I do think, it just depends. Like if you're not interested in having your child be in that environment, then maybe that's bad for you, but it's an excellent, great education.
Yeah.
Smaller, class sizes. Yeah. It's got a lot of positives.
Okay. So we're going to wrap up with what is the best piece of advice you could give to a parent looking and starting off for Chicago schools?
Do your research. I think if the more you know, the better. I also think that it's okay to make mistakes. I think it's, okay if you go to a school for a couple years and realize this is not where you should be with your kid. People change, your family changes. I just don't be so hard on yourself, and then preschool, it's a great, I was a total mess. I already told you, I changed my daughter a couple times, just trying to get the right fit. And I realized like there is just no one right fit. So I don't think you can make a wrong decision.
Yeah. And they can always hire somebody like yourself to help navigate the systems, to take a little stress off your shoulder, or at least be another ear to kind of talk to and be like, am I crazy?
No, I agree.
Most likely you are crazy, but
probably. I wish someone had told me I was, so that would have been nice.
All right, guys. Well, hopefully you took something away from this. We will link up all the websites that we mentioned on here, and thank you so much for listening to Laricy.